Welcome back to BLOCKTV. It's time now for Chain Breakers, where we sit down with the people making a difference in the crypto and blockchain industry. And today I'm joined by the one and only Dovey Wan, founding partner at Primitive Ventures. Dovey, thanks so much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Absolute pleasure to finally have you here in Tel Aviv, in the studios. It's a very exciting chance.
Yeah, definitely. First time here.
Well, I hope you enjoy. So to kick off today, I want to talk about some of the latest sort of news and information you've been reporting on, which is the reports coming out that you've been talking about the officers of Chinese ICO startup GX Chain that's been facing some difficulties, let's say, from Chinese authorities. What can you tell us about this? Because you were the one who broke this story.
Right. As far as I know right now, and basically the whole office has been emptied out, and everything is sealed out. And it seems like the whole executive team, as far as I know, is right now with the police for certain type of investigation. But right now, no one has confirmed information on what type of investigation is about. And this is actually kind of unexpected because GS Chain is what considered as a somewhat legitimate ICO back in 2017, and it has a legitimate business behind it. Is just a credit data. So basically, what they're doing as a business is the credit data processing. So that's why there's a lot of speculation around. Is it because of the crypto? Because they had the ICO back in 2017, or is it because of their data business? Because right now the data business, especially for personal finance data and personal credit data, is extremely sensitive. That's also related to peer-to-peer lending and to many other fintech area. So right now, I think it's unknown for what the actual reason is. Right,
but I mean, it's an interesting space because inside China, obviously, we've had you recently reported, and you spoke to us at the time on the Plus token, similar crackdown which occurred. Although, as you pointed out, that's a slightly different situation.
Yeah, that is a pure Ponzi.
Exactly, that has been seen as a pure Ponzi, and also there's been some some crackdowns and some focuses by the Chinese authorities on Tron as well. I understand.
I think the Tron case is kind of different, right? The Tron case, the Plus token case, and the GS Chain case, and I think they have their own characteristics, when it comes to, official just legal enforcement. And so for the GX Chain, like I said, it might be due to their personal data business, finance data business. And for Plus token, it's a complete Ponzi, and because the scale of the Ponzi is just massive and gigantic, and so the Chinese government tends to, so it's kind of a reactive type of approach, right? So if there's many people just report about it and then complain about it, and then so they were concerned about potential social unrest, and then so that's when they will actually take action. And because Plus token conservatively, and I think they probably have over right now the entire flow, just end-to-end flow, is about 200,000 Bitcoin, and then there's over a few million Ethereum. So basically the scale is over $3 billion US. So it's the scale is insane, right?
It's massive. I mean, that's a huge,
exactly.
Huge portion.
And then so especially thinking about they suck in all this crypto money from non-crypto people, basically from just average citizen, right? So that's why a lot of average citizen just get scammed, and then so they will write report to the police, and then so they will try to protest, and then so that's what the Chinese government will basically pay attention. So that's why Plus token just got some very quick action, so by the local police. And when it comes to the Tron case, and I think the Tron case is kind of unique because Tron finished the ICO right before the China ban, and Justin has been saying outside of China for most of the time, right? And so the recent drama of this Buffett launch got canceled, etc. And I think there's a lot of just unclear political influence behind it, and then which we don't have so we don't have idea of what it is actually. So I think like unless like there's any like official announcement of the Tron thing, and so that's when we can know like what's the actual reality behind it.
Right, but it's an interesting time in China then, especially though, because the Chinese government has made such sort of strong moves recently with their own central bank digital currency.
Yep.
They've announced, the People's Bank of China
Yep.
announced
Yep.
this move. So it's an interesting time for the crypto space in China, where there is in some areas, perhaps in scams and legitimately fraudulent schemes, but just generally are some crackdowns going on inside the country on existing private industries, but then also China
Yep.
moving towards
Yep.
this digital currency. How do you think that's working at the moment inside China?
Yeah. So the Chinese government has always been like pro blockchain. It's like blockchain but not crypto.
Right.
It has always been like that, right? So like blockchain is considered as a pretty decent technology and like a pen-only database, and then so it's and a lot of like local governments, and then so they're very supportive when it comes to consortium chain and just like all this like enterprise blockchain as a service company. And there's a lot of this like special district, and so like where if you are a blockchain entrepreneur, like just blockchain as a service entrepreneur, and then so you can get a lot of like government subsidy and sponsorship, like things like that. But they never encourage like private issue currency, like just a private issue cryptocurrency, and that's like a huge no-no. And I think the reason being is, and the government understand that like the ultimate power, like the ultimate sovereign power, like comes from the currency itself, right? Yeah. And so and then the other thing is that China is pretty advanced when it comes to digital payment, like Alipay, WeChat Pay. Right. But like all this payment is actually another layer of like surveillance when it comes to the financial behavior and financial privacy. And so the private issue cryptocurrency is actually giving back the power to the individual, and then giving back the power to like any non-sovereign entity or organization, right? And then so that is what's considered as not politically correct under the Chinese political environment.
So that's an interesting space and divide, because I suppose a lot of countries are dealing with similar issues at the moment. I mean, you've got the US, sort of battling to understand how they want to regulate Libra, for example, as a sort of private company threatening the potential sovereign control of the US dollar. But the Chinese are taking a leading approach by creating their own digital currency. Do you think that's going to give them an advantage moving into the future when it comes to, again, perhaps not true cryptocurrencies in the classic decentralized sense, but in terms of the digital currency space? Yeah,
so I think, so the PBOC has been working on this project for about 5 years now. And they have so like the patent list is over over 70 patents already, and so they have been actually taking a very deep look into it. And so the progress has been hampered for a while, and basically everything slowed down. But the recent Libra case actually stimulate like PBOC. And so basically PBOC understands that, okay, Libra basically gonna be like one kind of like SDR type of thing, and then like because like backend, so potentially gonna be like US dollar like as one of the packing currency potentially, and RMB not gonna be included anyway, right? And so I think this actually trigger the PBOC's just this like typical racing game, right? And then also like the other thing that's really aligned with the Chinese like national strategy is the One Belt One Road. Right. And then so when it comes to like enemy's enemy is friends, right? And so for like countries like Iran, like Cuba, and then a lot of other second-tier countries just along the way of like Middle East and then probably like Africa as well. And then so that's where Chinese government spend a lot of like time and money for the infrastructure investment. So like that's why there's actually like an organic need for renminbi to become global, especially for like those areas. And then so if you right now goes to countries in some of these African countries, and then renminbi has a pretty decent liquidity because there's a lot of this state-owned enterprise and just like making investments there and then paying salary there, and then so all the employee and then buying stuff there, and then so they have to wire money back to mainland China. So like the liquidity comes from the demand and supply, right? And so like that's why renminbi like sees like a decent liquidity over there. And I think that's why the Chinese government will consider this a digital version renminbi. It can be like a natural like next step. And then like the other thing about this digital renminbi is this digital renminbi gonna be M0. Everything gonna be issued from the central bank, right? And China for a long time facing a very major problem of like shadow banking. Shadow banking right now probably takes up nearly 30% of the entire M2. Like that's gigantic. So basically a lot of things that's outside the balance sheet of the local Chinese commercial bank that the PBOC has no visibility or like control over. So I think the other purpose of this digital renminbi like gonna be if we want to make our financial system and just like currency, just like the overall like the money business and currency business much more healthier, and then also helpful for like also helpful for deleveraging, right? Because many of these like shadow banking is just like level up, right? It's like much higher leverage products such as wealth management product and peer-to-peer lending, things like that. So it's actually also aligned with the purpose of the general macro deleveraging. So I think along with the purpose of like making renminbi more global, and this is like a perfect next step.
But as well, I suppose there's another factor we have to play into this as well. It's not just the Chinese working domestically or even internationally with partners they choose. We have to talk about this. It's not in a vacuum. There is a trade war going on at the moment between the US and China that doesn't look like it's necessarily going to, pass anytime soon. Sometimes the talks are moving forward, sometimes they're not. But it looks like it'll at least be in some form in existence for a while. Do you think the Chinese are preparing for a long-term trade war in this instance, and maybe taking that to a currency war perspective and in making sure that they've got at least, they're ready and prepared should things escalate further?
I think like if you think about US, right? So like US has a few unique unfair advantages. Like the first one is definitely US dollar, right? And like US has been exporting its own inflation, and because like shipping a ton of like US dollar overseas, right? And then like second is the US cultural influences, right? And then also like Silicon Valley is it's pretty unique place, and then so that's the home base for most of this like software innovation and like internet innovation. And I think that like the trade war right now, it is not just between US and China, right? So it's US with everybody else. Like US even have trade war with Canada, so that's never seen before, right? And then also we have seen Korea and Japan, they're actually in the middle of a much more severe trade war. And plus a ton of this nationalism things going on. I think like to be honest, and then so when I see this trade war, and a lot of people focus on just US and China, and for me, and I see this as a global level chaos going on. But chaos is the ladder, right? And this is actually the perfect ladder for crypto, right? And because crypto gonna thrive when the traditional parallel financial and economic system, they're in extremely chaotic status, right? And so this is like a cycle thing, and we are right now very similar as what we what we were in like late 1930s, right? And then so we have like strong handing leader being elected, and we have seen the rise of like populism, and then when presidency is like he has his own version of like making China great again. It's like 实现中华民族的伟大复兴 is exactly the same as Trump's like to make America great again, right? And so I think the political conflict is unavoidable, but it's actually a good thing. It's actually a good thing for our industry. And then so like that's why I think so internally, so at our firm, and we have a very interesting term as long crypto, short the world.
Okay.
Yeah. So like we are not shorting, but like we want to short like any like world chaos, right?
But does that mean, I mean, in your mind, is it one versus the other? Is it crypto versus the world? Like one has to fall for the other to rise, or do you think there can be a collective growth through cryptocurrencies and developing a new economic system?
Right. So I think it's not exclusive, right? And it's definitely not exclusive, but like crypto, like just like the crypto in general, and like provides us a alternative. Like we always want option, so we always want plan B. And then so if we think about the last financial crisis, it's because we have no the other alternative path, right? And so that's why I think like crypto to me, and then so if you want to feel secure, you always want to have option, right? And so like crypto to me is more like insurance in the other parallel universe, right? And then we want this two parallel universe, and then so they are always parallel, and then so hopefully, and then so we always want them to be coexist, right? And then so because we never know, probably someday like the crypto system gonna collapse as well, so we can flee back to whatever the traditional economic system. Like that's also possible, right? And so I think it's just diversity is the key. But like right now we don't have the other option, and then this is also like the reason why like people right now, so like all these central banks, and so they're all thinking about, okay, how we can get more gold, and then how we can, you know, like de-dollarize, and then so how we can get rid of like US dollar asset. And the PBOC has been selling off like US dollar asset like since like 2013, and like getting more gold, and same for the Russian central bank, right? And then we have seen a lot of like the other part of the world, and so like for central banks that thinking about building like a collective like reserve system, right? And then so all this behavior, and I think is just the aftermath of the Bretton Woods system. And because right now US dollar is a single point of failure, and then we want alternative.
So then I suppose maybe a simple question, maybe a complex one, but do you see, particularly in your own day-to-day life and context, do you see cryptocurrencies as a form of protest?
What do you mean by protest?
I mean, you know, you sort of say about it being an alternative to the current system, sort of a means of getting around the current financial system. In a next theorized global financial crisis or recession, you know, you could use that as a means to put, you know, money elsewhere, to have alternatives. But it also, as you said earlier, it takes away from the sovereign's power. Obviously, in some ways, you know, unless the sovereign can co-opt it, it does take away from that power. So I have to wonder, is it in and of itself a way of protesting the establishment system?
I think for like average people, like at least for average Chinese people, and because a lot of people has been asking me, oh, so it's like Chinese, because we have seen the renminbi has been devalued quite a bit, right? And so people assume, oh, so people like all this average Chinese citizen gonna flee into Bitcoin, but the reality is not. Like right now, Bitcoin and together with all the other cryptocurrency are still considered as highly speculative assets. And so one thing a lot of Westerners like didn't realize is like many of the trader, like many of these Asian traders, like behind like so many of these Asian crypto traders, they're also trading many other just like risky assets, like just like Chinese A shares, and then so FX, etc., right? So basically the investor profile, like the big investor profile, highly overlap. So I think majority of the traders, and especially for like retail investors, they still consider crypto as a speculative asset. And then Chinese market is 80% retail investor. So I don't think they will consider crypto as a protest or as a hedging towards the current economic system. So like that's why we didn't see any like Bitcoin premium when it comes to like so when like RMB like devalue dramatically, and then so like we don't see like a major flow into Bitcoin, right? And then so I think that's like that's one reality. So we are not there yet because the current economic system is not completely collapsed. It's just devalued, right? So when it comes to this devaluation, and the first hedging gonna be gold, and because people have access, like people back in China have access like to gold and gold index and like gold ETF and then with renminbi, like with like fiat on-ramp, right? So it's much more natural and then much more accessible for like average people just to hedge with gold. And so I think there's definitely some hardcore Bitcoiner or like hardcore crypto people, and then many of these like high net worth individual. They have the vision and they have the long-term plan on like what's gonna happen eventually, and then because like the next crisis might be the currency crisis, right? Because like they have been reading like Ray Dalio's posts and like things like that, and then understand we are currently in this like extremely low interest rate, but like it seems like economic is not picking up. And so I think if you have enough understanding of the macroeconomic and then you have enough like confidence in Bitcoin, and like those are the hardcore group that they will actually consider Bitcoin as like a protest and as like a hedge. But I think generally like the scale is not there, so it's just not significant as like a protest.
So then my last question to you would just be, what do you think it would take to achieve mass adoption of cryptos in China?
Massive adoption, like depending on how massive. And so I think like unlike the Western community, so the Chinese entrepreneur, like especially Chinese crypto entrepreneur, like they're really good at building application, like centralized applications such as wallet, exchanges, etc., etc. So those are the things with very high usability, right? So I think, to be honest, like Chinese user, they have like, and then on the other hand, Chinese local users, like they're very familiar with like digital payment and then also virtual currency from all these like games. And so I think crypto from market education perspective is much easier than like Western users. So that's why I think like if we compare the awareness and also the accessibility, and I think the Chinese market is actually better than US market or like Western market. And because everything has been digitized already, right? But the thing is like China's huge, right? 1.3 billion population. And then so if we can get 1% of that, like that's massive, right? Conservatively speaking, and I think so because just like combining like a few popular wallets like imToken, BitPie, and Bizim, and so like those are the three most, and then Kobo Wallet as well. Like those are the four probably the most popular wallet apps out there, and it has, I think combined they might have over like 10 million users, I guess. And so I think you can roughly consider 10 million user, like 10 million crypto users like back, so just like back in China, and probably even more. And I think the awareness of Bitcoin is much more deeper, like probably not in a good sense though, because Bitcoin for like a long time considered as a scam, as it has been used by all these like Ponzi's as like crypto on-ramp. But people definitely have like awareness there. And then I think right now the key problem is how to educate people the true value proposition of Bitcoin, and then just like cryptocurrency in general, and then also how to deal with the potential midterm bear case of all this like sovereign digital coin, and then probably can ease off like Bitcoin and the other public digital currencies, and the mind share and like markets. I think those are the two biggest like challenge that I see right now in mainland China.
It'll be interesting to see how those barriers do get broken down, if they do, and how the market shifts there in China. But I want to thank you so much for sharing with us your insight, Dovey, coming for us today and join us in our BLOCKTV studios. It's been a pleasure having you. Dovey Wan, thank you so much for being here with us. And of course, stay with us at blocktv.com for all the latest in news, information, and the best of analysis. I'm Asher Westrop Evans. Thanks for watching.
For more news and updates, follow us on Twitter.